Well, greetings, my scattered sisters and brothers in the Lord. So good to share this time with you as we journey through the Gospel of John. The wedding is over, and Jesus has gone with his mother and his brothers to stay with them for a while. And then from there, he goes to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover. Now, the Passover is this huge celebration that remembers and celebrates how God delivered the Israelites up out of Egypt, out of that bondage to Pharaoh. And it's a huge celebration. Jews from all over the Roman Empire come to Jerusalem to celebrate this. God fearing Gentiles go to Jerusalem to celebrate this because they worship Israel's God and they celebrate what God has done, his mighty acts of salvation. And so there are people from all over Judea, all over the Roman Empire, who have come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover, and Jesus is there with them. He's celebrating the Passover. And when Jesus goes to the temple, what he sees really disturbs him. In the outer area of the temple, where the Gentiles were allowed to go and to pray and to worship, what he finds there is basically a market. People are selling and buying their sacrifices. They had tables set up where people could exchange their money so that they had the right currency to pay the temple tax. There were people who were selling lambs and goats, so that the travelers, the pilgrims, wouldn't have to bring their animals with them. They could just bring money with them, and then when they get to the temple, they can buy the animals for their sacrifices. And this is all going on in the only area that's open to the Gentiles to where they can come and worship and pray to the God of Israel. There are people there who are selling doves to those who were too poor to purchase a lamb or a goat. And when Jesus sees this going on, all this buying and selling, he's infuriated. And he gets some cords and he makes a whip out of them and he begins to drive out the cattle and the sheep, the goats. And then he turns over the money table so that there are coins going everywhere. And Jesus says, "Get these out of here, that you have turned my Father's house into a market." And Jesus puts a stop to business as usual that day. And so the story goes on a little bit in terms of where, how he's confronted, where does he get the authority to do these things? We'll talk about that another time. I want us to focus in on those words, "This is my Father's house, and you have turned it into a market." Uh, they probably had good motives in turning it into a market. I don't think they were just doing it to rip people off, just doing it to make money. I'm sure there were some who were doing that, but it was really a matter of convenience, to make it easy for people to make the journey to Jerusalem and to just bring money and then to be able to purchase their animals there. But it was happening in the courtyard for the Gentiles where they should be able to pray. And so, this place of prayer, this place where there was to be worship to God, had been turned into a market. And Jesus, infuriated, it's his Father's house. It's to be a place where you connect with God, a place where you worship God, a place where you pour your life out to God, a place where God meets you. And they defiled it by turning this meeting place with God into a market. My Father's house. Well, I can't read past that without wondering, okay, what have we turned our Father's house into? Maybe it's not a market per se, in terms of people come and buy lambs and goats or have to exchange their money for proper currency. But I wonder if we have somehow turned our Father's house into something other than a house of worship, a house of prayer, a place where we can count on being met by God and where we can bring all of our life to God. I just wonder. I recently heard about a church that had been really shut down and turned into a food distribution center. And it just kind of echoes in my heart You have turned my Father's house into a food distribution center, a place where people were to come and meet with God and offer life to God. And now the only thing they can get there is rice and beans. Just tragic. And it's not that people don't need food, and it's not that the church shouldn't be engaged in compassionate ministries and meeting people's physical needs, but to swap out a meeting place with God for simply distributing beans and rice, tragic. And then I think we go a whole nother direction. You have turned my Father's house into a place of entertainment. Instead of a place of prayer, instead of a place of meeting with God and hearing from God and connecting with God, just turning my Father's house into a place to be entertained for a while before going back to the routines of life. Again, how tragic. And it's not that our services shouldn't be attractive or shouldn't be appealing or shouldn't have quality. Uh, it's not that, but to just turn it into a place of entertainment, to where it's really no different than going to the movies or going to a concert. How tragic that is. We should be able to expect and count on going to our Father's house and have a meeting with God. So that's my thoughts for today. What have we done to our Father's house? I hope and pray that our Father's house is still a place where we actually meet with our Father. God bless. Have a great day wherever you're scattered. And my prayer is that we'll have a meeting with our Father the next time we're in our Father's house. God bless.